Good evening. Would like to call the Rutherford County School Board work session to order. Today is July 25th, 2022. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance led by Dr. Anthony.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony. I'd like to invite everybody to join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. All right. Are there any questions on the agenda before we move forward? There are not. How about the consent agenda? Members of the board, there is an item I'd like to move from the consent agenda to the main agenda, and that is, it doesn't have an item, it's under F, and it's Rutherford County Board of Education request to use My Benefits channel. I think it's appropriate to probably move that to the financial department on our, or section of our agenda, please, if there are no objections, members of the board. Dr. Sullivan?
I agree. That would, just because of the dollar amount, I think that'd be a great idea.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or concerns on the consent agenda?
We also, I may have 2 additional coaches to throw on our consent agenda. It's not something that we want to make a habit of doing, but with our fall sports starting ASAP, we want to make sure that we have any coaches possible approved, since our next board meeting is not until sports season's already started.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. Also on the regular agenda, members of the board, I'd like to move item number 9, visitors, to number 6, take care of our visitors up front. There are no objections. Thank you. Okay. It's a different agenda, so
Yes.
Forgive me, so it's a little different. So I guess that would be number 6, is that right?
Yes. So 6, support of educators, resolution tab 2. The Board of Education recognizes significant contributions of teachers and staff and their dedication to the students of our school system. Our teachers and staff have gone beyond the call of duty to maintain exemplary education in the face of COVID and other challenges over the last several years. The board values our teachers and staff and our system and wants to thank them for the success of our school system. The success of our school system would not be possible without the dedicated and tireless work of our teachers and staff.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments, members of the board? Also, is Mr. Reed here? I think, this is the resolution. I don't know that unless the board members would like you to this evening, would you like the resolution to be read, members of the board? Okay, Mr. Young would like it.
Or a copy.
This is, I think it's tab number 2 on your board agenda. But obviously, we've gone through a lot the last couple of years, and the board want to take time to thank our teachers and our staff for all the contributions they made to the school system over the last couple of years. And so that's this resolution is a small token towards that effort. And it says, Rutherford County Schools Board of Education Support of Educators Resolution is whereas an excellent public education system is vital to both the quality of life and the economic prosperity of Rutherford County, and whereas it is essential to have intelligent, nurturing educators committed to the mission of preparing the students for a life of scholarship, integrity, and service, and whereas research confirms that teachers have an enormous effect on student learning, second only to that of parents, and whereas parents in our community expect classrooms to be staffed with high-quality professionals who are experts in both their content fields and effective strategies, and whereas the Rutherford County School District strives to meet these expectations by filling all available positions with the best and brightest educators from accredited and proven educator preparation programs, and whereas educational professionals face more diverse considerations in today's educational environment than at any other time in history, including academic performance, extracurricular activities, wellness, counseling, and mental health support, among others. And whereas educators in the Rutherford County School District demonstrate time and again that they are committed to helping all students reach their full potential by fostering engaging, safe environments that prioritize critical thinking, problem solving, and meaningful interpersonal relationships. And whereas the Rutherford County School District has consistently been recognized for providing rigorous educational opportunities that facilitate exceptional student achievements. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Rutherford County Schools Board of Education does formally offer this statement of support and appreciation for the dedicated professional educators who work tireless to make the Rutherford County school system one of the best in the state of Tennessee by providing exemplary instruction, support, and related services to the students of our district. So that is the resolution you have being presented to you for Wednesday night.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay.
All right, now we have our Assistant Superintendent of Budget and Finance, Mr. Brian Runyon. Mr. Runyon, you want to introduce yourself? You can stay there if you want to, make you feel more comfortable. And so, Brian, we're excited to have him join us. We had a principals meeting to where we talked about several of the things that we needed to do to move us forward and make sure that we were forward-thinking, but also being respectful of the ideas and thoughts of our teachers and administrators as well. So, Brian?
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan, and I appreciate the opportunity for this, board members and chairwoman. I just want to give a little bit of background about me and what my philosophies are as far as when it comes to finance. First and foremost, I'm originally from East Tennessee. I moved over to Middle Tennessee in 2008 or 2004 to go to MTSU. I graduated from MTSU. And then in 2008, I ended up going to the military where my government accounting background started. I did 4 years in the Navy and then 7.5 years with TDOE as a fiscal consultant to 27 school districts, so Rutherford County being one of those. So I am familiar with the district for sure. Then in 2000, I think it was 2021, I got the opportunity to go to Marshall County to be their finance director for a brief 5 months. And what happened there is when Doug was in this position, he actually poached me from there to come back to Murfreesboro and be closer to home. So, and then I was accounting manager for a little over a year and a half almost, before Dr. Sullivan gave me the opportunity to move into this position. So I look forward to working with each one of y'all. To me, it's one of those situations where, you know, we're held accountable to, you know, the taxpayers of Rutherford County, but yet at the same time, we're trying to keep our students number one in the way, you know, we can use our funds towards, you know, our overall purpose for them. I guess Dr. Sullivan told me I didn't address it last time at our principals meeting, but my leadership perspective and the way I do things, I lead as I want to be, as I would like to be led, which that means allowing my employees to have the autonomy and the ability to think freely. I don't micromanage. I let them come to me if there are issues, because a lot of my staff is very knowledgeable. They're veterans in what they do, and they're very good at it. So I allow them to let them bring their problems to me, and then, you know, we work through them together. I also make sure and ensure the work that is dependent on us is getting completed as need be. So those are a little bit about me, a little bit about my leadership styles and my philosophy whenever I'm working in the finance department. So.
Thank you. And you actually served on the USS Enterprise as well. Isn't that where you did
yes,
your
service? Yes, it was the USS Enterprise, and for you Star Wars people, it's not the Starship Enterprise. People get that confused from time to time, but yes, it was actually, and for the Top Gun, if you watch the first Top Gun, it was that actual aircraft carrier that they were filming the movie off of.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
And biggest accolade I can give to Brian is when I reached out to the State Department to ask them who are some up-and-coming people that you would recommend that you may have seen in your office, and you don't necessarily need to look anywhere because you have who I would recommend already in your district.
Wow.
It's a great recommendation. So thank you, Brian.
Can I make a comment, please? Welcome, Mr. Runyon. And I'd like to say zero balance budget, teachers and staff raises first.
We've talked about that as well, going back, and that lines up with TISA quite a bit as well, because we almost do have to start. You don't start necessarily from scratch. We have to start from an understanding of where our district is and what we need, but putting employees first. Agree completely. So, and we will start next month as well. We met today. You guys will get a simplified version of the revenues and expenditures each month so that you will know what our revenues are, what our expenditures are, what the allocated funds are, and what percentage that we admit of that.
Wonderful. First and foremost, thank you for your service.
Yes.
Welcome to your new position. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right, next item.
Yeah, next item will be on Wednesday, our Spotlight on Education. Whitworth Buchanan Middle School recognized as a model school, and Ms. Sneed will be here. Just 3 short years ago, this school was on a targeted assistance for just about every subgroup. A lot of times we have multiple or one subgroup that we may struggle with. Whitworth was on for multiple. It's the first time I've ever seen a subgroup identified as white as a subgroup that we weren't performing well. So it was white, African American, special education, ESL, just about every subgroup that you can be identified for. And in 2 years, one of those being COVID, so no testing, they were a reward school, and then they were asked to apply, and then were selected as a model school. So she'll be here to share a little bit about her story on Wednesday.
Thank you. We'll do visitors on Wednesday. Keep when I say Thursday. Next item.
Yeah, next is the only other school the board at our last meeting approved us to do a hard to staff, but also then looking at anybody that was over 15%. The Roy Waldron School, technically the main building, if you include the main building and the annex, and we have talked about them being one school, but we didn't feel like it was fair because they do still have 2 administrators for us to single out only one portion of that building. So we're recommending that Roy Waldron School, the pre-K through 5, be added to that hard to staff bonus. They have multiple openings, and that is to be expected when you have a new principal. That's nothing to save anything of our new principal. I think she'll do a great job, but anytime you have transition, you have people leave, and that's always been a harder to staff area as well. We have 2 other schools that were close, but they didn't quite meet that 15% threshold.
When you say multiple openings, can you give us a closer idea?
Yes, I'll do that during
Is
the
it more than
director's
15%?
update.
Okay.
Oh, yes, much more than 15%.
Any questions on this item, members of the board?
Do we have numbers of how many positions we're down as a total?
Yes, I will have you that update on Wednesday. Dr. Chastain actually emailed principals, just so that you're aware, you know, at our last policy meeting, I just gave you a quick show of what it looked like for us to see from the HR standpoint and the payroll standpoint. So we've asked principals, they very well could be in the middle of hiring somebody and their paperwork hasn't been completed yet. So we want to know, as of today, what are the positions that you still have open that you may not be able to fill, so that we can have a week and a half to try to figure out who in our departments can we fill in as needed. So I'll have that for you on Wednesday by school.
Any other questions? Okay, next item.
Next is just for discussion. So discussion on permitting classified employees to serve as athletic coaches and extracurricular sponsors. This was changed. I was coaching in the district when this changed, just for background. We removed that ability, largely to deal with the wage and hour laws, to make sure that someone who was on an hourly classified schedule was not violating their wage and hour laws to be able to help after school and coach. Where we are now with having staffing shortages, we have reached out to our principals as well. That was the other part of Dr. Chastain's survey, to see what feedback do they have and how many of our middle and high school, specifically athletics, specifically would be interested in having that. And I'll have that for you on Wednesday. But I'm open to discussion. I know that other districts still allow that. We disallowed that as a concern for potential lawsuits with overtime and those type of things. I've been working with Ms. Ridley and then Mr. Reed as well, and some of our team trying to figure out a way to do what's best for our district, to also make sure our employees are taken care of.
I appreciate you looking at this. I have some concerns. I've heard from some classified employees. We're stuck between, in a sense, not getting in trouble and making sure our kids have their needs met. So I'd like to see us find a workaround
Agree.
that will serve both our employees, but our students.
Great. Yeah, especially your high revenue sports are usually going to find coaches, but some of your non-revenue sports, you know, you have kids that are interested in participating, and we may have somebody who's interested in helping, but they're a classified employee, and our own procedures are not allowing that sport to happen, which would be good for our kids. So if we can find a way to make that happen, I 100% believe that should happen.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Next item.
All right, 12, IXL Learning, Title I, and this is on tab 3. So Laverne Middle students use the IXL program as guided practice to help support and reinforce standards and skills taught in the classroom. The IXL program will also assist teachers in collecting data to help them plan for students in need of remediation and enrichment. Data will provide for student-centered PLC conversation and teacher reflection. The IXL program will be available for all students and used in all core classrooms to help move students toward proficiency on assessments. The details: annual subscriptions, the 22-23 school year, IXL site license with unlimited instructor accounts in math, English language arts, science, and social studies. Total cost of $28,125, and you have the quote listed there.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Okay, next item.
Next, Curriculum Instruction, tab 4, number 1, Carl D. Perkins Reserve Grant. So the Carl D. Perkins Reserve Grant is a competitive grant process, and we were awarded $30,000 for the secondary education work for CTE equipment and $20,000 for student industry certifications for the funding period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th of 2023 for a total of $50,000.
That's nice. That's always good. Any questions or comments?
Did I read that this was just sort of the first go-round, that there could be more?
Yeah, this is something based on what the allocations are each year. You can get extra. This is just part of our extra funding that we actually get.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, next item.
Next is federal programs. Curriculum Instructions requesting to reorganize federal programs and student support services to fall under the Curriculum and Instruction Department. So this change would require the modification of the admin index to create a new index of director instead of a new position. The proposed index would fall between that of a coordinator and assistant superintendent and is proposed at 1.30. The federal programs coordinator job description will be modified to a director of federal programs and special populations. This position would oversee the departments of special education, federal programs, 504, and English as a second language. And just to kind of give some perspective, right now you have curriculum and instruction that oversees parts of that. And so you have a special education coordinator, which usually most of that funding falls within federal. You have career and technical education. You have English as a second language. Under student support, and with Dr. Anthony, we have the homebound, we have 504, trying to organize all of that into one. We also know as a district, special education is usually where our most at-risk and highest need students are, and providing a little bit more oversight over that area would help strengthen a lot of our areas.
How much money do we save by not adding another position?
Oh, by just making this, you're looking at easily over $110,000 or $115,000 by making a modification to a position instead of adding. And that would be just salary, not including benefits.
And the level of service will maintain, not be the same.
It should, the level should increase.
Okay.
This is a great move.
Yep.
Very happy.
So sometimes you have to look at doing things a little bit differently. I know this isn't necessarily something we've had it organized that way in the past, but when we know that we have an issue, we have to look at fiscally responsible ways to fix it.
Appreciate you doing that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, next item.
3, Cognitive Abilities Test, CogAT. And so the Instruction Department is requesting to continue using the Cognitive Abilities Test, CogAT, as a second grade screener for academic aptitudes and gifted abilities. The cost of the assessment is $54,000. We are required by the Tennessee Department of Education to do child find for gifted services. We surveyed our principals to ask them about CogAT because one of the interview questions for the director of schools was about unnecessarily testing. We've tried to get around some of those, but we still have to have a screener, and our principals just about unanimously chose to stay with CogAT instead of another option.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Next item.
All right, next we have the state health plan benefit premiums, tab 5. Dr. Anthony, do we have a presentation tonight, or are we going to do it Wednesday?
Yes, Suzette's going to speak to everybody. She's our new senior specialist.
Yes, and Suzette has done an amazing job. We see each other, if not every day, every other day. So we're grateful you're here, and you've done an amazing job leading our team.
Thank you. So what I've presented is the landscaped one is for the active employees, and it does show what the premiums would have been versus what the premiums will be going forward in 2023. The column next to the far right is the employee contributions and their savings for the year. So there was quite a bit of savings. There were just 2 premiums that were a little higher than what they paid in 2022. But overall, for the active, the premiums are going to be better than what we paid for 2022. Then for the next attachment, it's the one that's stapled together. That's the pre-65. The post-65 will stay with the county for 1 more year, and the pre-65 will come back to us. And there are, stipulations that we have to follow by the state if they're eligible or not. So this is broke out to the retirees with the 30 years. We will continue to pay 50% of the premiums for them and their dependents. And then the next page is 20 to 29 years, sorry. That also will be the 50%. And the employee contributions is the highlighted area, and the employer is the second column, so you'll be able to see that. The third page are the retirees with less than 20 years. That's where we start paying the lesser employer contribution. The employee contributions for their dependents will be 62.5%, where the employer contribution for their dependents will be 37.5%. Same thing for greater than 20 years. That jumps back up to, this is for support staff. All of that was for the teachers. Sorry about that. The next area is the support staff. We do pay 50% for them. If they've been over 20 years, less than 20 years, it goes back to the 62.5 and 37.5. One thing I did not include on the agenda was the vision and dental, but I did include those for y'all to see. The dental, there was no change from last year, from 2022, and the vision was minimum premium increases there.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, members of the board?
How are we rolling this out how are we getting this information out to the employees?
We're having educational fairs on August 1st, 2nd, and 5th. They're gonna be 4 to 6 every afternoon on those days. We're gonna do one at Laverne High School, one at Stewart's Creek High School, and one at Riverdale. And then we're gonna also hold one here at the central office for those employees, pre-65 retirees, so that we can answer any of their questions. Me and my staff, I have a staff of 3. We're going to also be going out to the schools once they open and being available to them for any of their questions. The open enrollment is going to be, right now it's set for September 6th to November 18th. That November 18th may change a little bit. It may be backed up just because we're working with my benefits channel on getting some stuff done. So during that time, we're going to make ourselves readily available to them and go to the schools. We've separated all of the schools between all 4 of us so that we can be there.
Thank you.
In our rollout may, I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, it may include us having to modify the calendar so that we give every one of our employees the accurate information so that they have that time to do open enrollment as needed. We do have an upload into My Benefits channel through Edison the first time, which is what the state vendor uses, but then our team will be hand entering every employee after that point. And so it is going to be a massive workload. I'll be going to each faculty over the first couple weeks of school, and that'll be something I hit on as well, is that we are doing a new insurance plan if you're on our county insurance or interested. So please be listening to that information because it is a huge savings. I think just looking at a couple of those, that's what that first page that she handed out is looking at what the savings is for a year. I mean, it's a substantial, really, I hate to say a raise, but it's money going back to our employees that it was not in the past.
More back in their pocket.
It is.
Will we be able to see these dates on our website? Will they be posted?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And this is something that's fluid. You know, it's a huge venture, so if we see that we need to add support, again, I may come and ask for more support to be able to help with this transition.
It's a big task. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. We appreciate the information provided. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to the next item.
I think she covered 1, 2, and 2. So now we'll move over to 15. So memorandum of understanding between Volunteer Behavioral Health Care System and Rutherford County Schools, tab 6. So this memorandum of understanding, MOU, documents an agreement between Volunteer Behavioral Health Care System, hereinafter referred to as VBHCS, and Rutherford County Schools, hereinafter referred as Rutherford Board of Education or Rutherford County Schools, each individually as the party and collectively as the parties. Whereas VBHCS desires to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Rutherford County Board of Education to provide the services described herein and further described in VBHCS contract with the State of Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services for school-based behavioral mental health liaisons to the students within Rutherford County Schools. That was a lot of acronyms, and you can tell Monica, Jeff, and a lawyer wrote that one for sure.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, next item.
Next, if the board's all right, I'm just going to read the policy numbers and the title beside it. So we have legal tab 7, so policy adoption, first and final reading. We had a policy meeting last Monday, I believe was the date, and these are ones we're recommending to on first and final reading so that they can go into place before the school year begins. So policy 1.102, board members' legal status. B, policy 1.808, registered sex offenders. Policy 2.806, bids and quotations. Policy 3.202, emergency preparedness plan. Policy 3.400, student transportation management. Policy 4.101, instructional standards. Policy 4.210, credit recovery. Policy 4.212, virtual education program. Policy 4.402, selection of instructional materials other than textbooks. J, policy 4.403, reconsideration of instructional materials and textbooks, and I probably will read the language for those on Wednesday, just since those are a common one that I know people want to know about. K, policy 4.606, use of internet. Policy 4.4061, employee use of social media and personal websites. Policy 4.600, the grading scale, again, that's moving to a 10-point scale from a 7-point scale. Policy 4.602, grade point average and class rank. Policy 5.200, separation practices for tenured teachers. P, policy 5.201, separation practices for non-tenured teachers. 5.701, substitute teachers. Policy 6.200, attendance. Policy 6.204, attendance of non-resident students. Policy 6.312, use of personal communication devices and electronic devices. Policy 6.318, admission of suspended or expelled students. Policy 6.409, reporting child abuse. Policy 6.502, foreign exchange students. Policy 6.505, students in foster care. So that gets us through the first and final. New policies along with that, though, are policy 5.119, employment of retirees. We're requesting that on a first reading as well.
Thank you. You can go on.
Yep. All right, so now we get into the recommended approval of 2 motions. And so you will see that in order for us to move, we have that recommended motion to approve to suspend board policy 1.600 that allows us to waive that 2 reading requirements. And again, recommended to approve to adopt these on the first and final.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, members of the board? Okay, next item.
Next, we have Facilities and Construction, tab 8, so Transportation Director, updated job description. So Engineering, Construction, Human Resources Department are requesting an updated job description for the Transportation Director position to include revised language and updated job description. Just as a follow-up, I believe it currently still states that a school admin licensure is required to have the Transportation Director. Is that right? Yep, and so in looking at transportation and what we need, I'm not sure that's necessarily the best of what is needed at this moment.
Understood. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, next item.
All right, next we have the 5-year building plan update, and so I'll let Trey talk about this. Trey and I met today to give me an understanding, because that was an area that I did not have a whole lot of understanding of beforehand, to go through how are the different municipalities reporting numbers to us, what is our system for that, and how can us and as a board have updated information so that as we move forward, all parties know exactly what we're looking at. So, Trey?
Turn the mic back on. All right, so if you remember the other day, I handed out a packet at the last board meeting. Basically, we utilize information from all the local municipalities, and it gives us 2 or 3 things. The first thing it tells us is, if you remember, you had a document top page is the Dodge Summary Report, and that's from the city of Murfreesboro. They provide us with 5 or 6 different documents, and each document, they give you similar but different information, and it all kind of bleeds in together. But we can disseminate that information, and we're able to use it in multiple facets. Number one, it helps us with planning for schools. It also, based on other information, we're able to look at zoning changes that may need to be made or that are coming. The other thing it tells us is we use it a lot for transportation. A lot of people would think, well, why would you be using building permits and that sort of thing for transportation? But these documents show us the new subdivisions, which sections have come into play, how many lots are in a given subdivision, and how many have actually been permitted and how many are left available. So when we look at Rutherford County's index out in the county, outside of the local city limits, there may be 50 subdivisions. Well, a number of those are built out. They may have 1 lot left or 2 lots left. Well, by looking at that, that indicates that we're not looking at a new bus route for that area. However, if we've got a new subdivision that's that has had a section almost complete, and then they start on a second section, that may indicate, depending upon the price point of that subdivision, looking at adding a additional route or looking at the route that's there and restructuring it. So there's a number of things we get from these reports. The other thing that we are given is we can compare them to last year's. Now, the city of Murfreesboro, they put all theirs on one page. It doesn't fit on a single page anymore. But they give me current back to 2017. So I can go back 5 or 6 years and create a bell curve that's going to plot the long-term growth for an area, and it kind of gives us an indicator of where we're going to go and helps us project, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years out into the future. So that being said, as an example, last year in the city limits of Murfreesboro, they issued 984 single-family detached permits, which that's a single-family home, 984. Single-family attached, which would be a duplex or an addition, 790. Multifamily, which is apartments. It can be a condo section where they have 6 or 8 buildings attached together, but it's anything that's more than 2. There were 600 of those. So the total residential units, developers, 2,374. City of Murfreesboro is our largest every year.
Trey, if you don't mind, and what was good for me is because I was looking at my own subdivision. We hear about our subdivisions. I know my subdivision has about an extra 100 houses that will go into it, but those have been approved as a subdivision site, but they haven't necessarily been approved to pull a permit yet because they'd start paying taxes on that.
Yeah, what happens?
It was all new information for me, so Trey was the teacher today, teaching me a lot.
One of the things that's kind of interesting, back in 2008 when we kind of had the last little downturn in our economy, a lot of developers in the Murfreesboro area, not just here, all over the country, had the way they operated is if they had a development that was 200 or 300 homes, they would go in and put in all the water, all the sewer, build the roads, put in the electrical lines, build the whole development out, and then start building houses. Well, what happens is, to do that, you have to record the plat. When you record the plat as a developer, you get to pay the development tax to the county or your local municipality. Well, what happened in that downturn and everything went bust and all these people they were taking the keys to these developments to the bank and handing them to their bankers. They learned a lot from that. What takes place today is they get the entire subdivision approved, but they divide it into sections. So a development may have 250 to 600 homes in it. They don't want to pay development tax on the whole thing, even though the whole subdivision is approved. So they will plat a section. Most of these are anywhere from 30 to 50, can be 100 depending on the development. Most of them are in the 30 to 50 range. because that developer figures that over a 12-month period or less, he's going to build out all those homes. And he gets to pay the development tax the minute that plat is recorded. So he wants to build as many as he can. He doesn't want it in too small a pieces, but he also doesn't want it too large and end up paying that development tax and end up 15, 20, 30, 40 lots that he's already paid the tax on that he can't sell. So they develop these, they record the plats periodically. And the good thing about what the county does and what the city of Murfreesboro does, they break it down into each one of those sections. So that tells us how many sections, how many lots in each section, how many lots are available, and how many lots have already been sold. So we can predict what percentage it is and what we need to look at. The city of Smyrna does theirs a little bit different. It basically just gives, and the thing I like about them is, which really helps transportation, they give us the full address. With a plat, it does not necessarily, it shows they number the lots 1 through 25. Well, then the city goes in and establishes with 911 the actual address for the house, 101, 103, 105, 202, whatever the number is. They do that in conjunction with them. Well, we don't find that information out till after the fact. The city of Smyrna provides it not by subdivision, but by actual street address. If it's got a 911 street address, it tells me the subdivision's further along, and it helps transportation. We can actually see where those streets are. Until a development is platted, those street numbers don't go into 911, and sometimes they don't go into 911 and Google for some time after that development is open, and we have parents calling telling us they live on a certain road and it's not in our database. And it's because Google and the state has not caught up to where the county's sending that information to the state, but it hasn't come back the other way.
Where you could open Rocky Fork Middle School and all the deliveries get sent to the Mona boat ramp. Yes. That could theoretically happen as well, correct?
Well, yes, that theoretically, in fact, did happen on more than one occasion.
Just wondering.
And the great thing about 911 now, which we didn't have before, there's a Rock Springs Road in Murfreesboro and there's a Rock Springs Road in Smyrna. There's multiple duplicate road names in the county. That does not happen anymore. Through all of this collaboration and coordination, this is what happens. Basically, the city of Murfreesboro probably has somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 lots available. That means that's what they've approved, but that's not what's been developed. And even after they've paid the plat, they don't go pull 30 permits that day. They pull the permits as they develop and as they sell the lot and the homeowner or the developer is ready to build. So with the information we're given, we can look out there to see how many developments they are and what the potential could be, because the county sends it to us in lots available, lots approved. So an approved lot is not an available lot. What's available has had a plat recorded. What's out there is what they've overall approved for that subdivision. So there's two different numbers, and they get mixed together a lot, where they think that we've got more lots permitted or out there ready to build on. They are approved, but the plats haven't been recorded yet. Until the plat's recorded, they're a ways off from actually being built. Smyrna, typically 30 to 40 a month. Murfreesboro's somewhere between 150 and 250. It's cyclical, it's up and down. But they're fairly close on average, especially the last 3 to 5 years. But that's the information we get from them. That's how we use it. And it's not just used by one department, it's used by 3 or 4 different departments.
And one thing we've talked about today is making sure that we get this information from all of our municipalities, and then I would like for you guys to have it. I know we get it monthly. I don't necessarily know that we need to see it monthly, but maybe every 3 months, so that we can look at trends and so that we can hopefully not be surprised when we see Rockville High School type of situations again, to where we see them building
And
hundreds of houses.
It is, depending upon how it's sent.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been looking at these for years, so it's like you guys looking at an educational book. This is what I look at. I'll be glad to take a few minutes with you and go through it the first month, one-on-one if you'd like, because like I said, it does come differently, but once you've seen it a couple of times, it'll begin to make sense for you.
Yep.
We have reached out a couple of times, not in writing, I've just left messages to the city of Laverne. I did actually email them today and ask if they produced any kind of a report like this, would they mind sharing it with us? And I have not heard back yet, but I expect Mr. Sayers will be back in touch with me in the next day or two.
Yeah, because that's going to be needed. That was something we talked, I was on the radio today, and we talked about growth areas and looking continually at the Stewart's Creek, Rock Springs, Laverne
And that,
areas.
putting that piece of the pie together, because the only way, the county can't really tell us. What really puts it all together till those plats are recorded, I need the county, and I need Smyrna, and I need Laverne, and I need to be able to look at all three, or we do, as a district. I say I apologize. We, as a district, need all three of those components to work together, because all three are in that northern end of the county, and getting that information to where we can see it all at one time would be very beneficial for us. So I have asked for it.
It's kind of hard to plan without that information. Excuse me.
I was just going to say, more likely, the 11,000 number we keep hearing from Laverne, that's not accurate.
It's probably accurate from approved overall subdivision, but from recorded plats, no. They have not recorded those plats.
Yeah, they're
Now,
not pulling
they're
it.
out there, yes.
Yeah.
They have been approved by the Planning Commission, but they have not gotten to the plat stage yet. Not all of them. Some of them, there's probably a few that have. I know there's one, the most recent one is at the end of Sam Ridley and Blair Road. And the only reason I know about it is when I was on the Smyrna Planning Commission, a third of that subdivision is in the city limits of Smyrna, and 2/3 of the development's in the city limits of Laverne. So you get into dual districts, and it takes longer. That one is coming very soon because they've had the road shut down all summer, doing the utility, the water, the gas, and the sewer, trying to get to it. The town of Smyrna is supplying all those utilities. They've been very good, emailing us, keeping us up to date on what was going on with the road, because it actually closed before school got out. Their intent's to have it finished in the next 2 weeks before our 2-hour day. And they still think they're on track to do that, and I hope they are, because it impacts a lot of buses. So that development's there. It's 250 to 300 homes. They do have one section ready to plat. Once the road gets open, they're going to plat it. They haven't platted anything yet.
That would probably be like 50 homes or 100 homes.
I would say 30 to 50 in a single plat. There again, we don't know. I don't know what Laverne approved as part of their official plat, because it's when you split. Even though parts in Smyrna and parts in Laverne, if that plat area, that section number 1, if it splits 2 zones, they got to do half the section that's in Smyrna with Smyrna and the section that's with Laverne and Laverne. There's got to be some kind of way they could get together and do one. It costs the developer twice as much work, but that's just the way it is right now.
That's something,
So I don't
again,
know
I'll
what's
work.
platted yet.
Yeah, I'll work. I know that I can reach out to Mayor Cole as well and figure out a way for us to get this information, because I grew up going to Old Timers Day, so there shouldn't be, that was something, Laverne, that we always did. And so as long as we have the information, we can always make sure we're making the best decisions.
If there's any indication of how that area is growing, is they already have the light at Rock Springs and Waldron Road. It's already up and it's operational. So that from Waldron Road, and I've been talking about this for months, probably more than 6 months, Waldron Road to Sam Ridley, west of the interstate to the county line, that whole area back there is growing.
Is that the hill that has been completely destroyed, as you see?
Yeah,
from
that was the
interstate?
Gwynn Farm,
Okay,
Yeah.
right behind Rock Springs Church of Christ.
gotcha.
That entire development is platted. However, they've just, about 2 months ago, bought 110 acres right over the hill that's on the Lee roadside. So that development's going to extend now over the hill and down to Lee Road.
I thought you were going to tell me they were going to give us that for a school.
No,
No,
Oh, Trey.
not quite.
no, no. I appreciate the information, Mr. Lee, that you provided. And I too reached out to Mayor Cole about a week ago asking for the numbers, the difference between what has been approved and what permits have actually been pulled. The data he gave me, the number was closer to about 205 for all of last year, 205 permits in the
That
second.
sounds about right.
So when
That would be in there with Smyrna in that 20 to 25. Now, they could take a bump,
yes.
you know, at any time, but that.
And that was only the sections he provided. He led me to believe there was additional, and he would be getting more
There
information.
probably is. I'm going to say that's his single family. It probably doesn't include any apartments. So that's why I ask for all of it, because you do have to put it all together. Because if you say 600 homes in the city limits of Murfreesboro, that doesn't sound too bad. But if you say 600 apartment units, that's a lot. And we pull up at there's a couple of apartment complexes that we pull up to twice. And they load a bus in one stop. They take the children to school, and we turn around and go back and pull up, and they load the bus again.
Yeah.
And we take the children and we go back.
That Arbor Town that was just approved that actually has Mayor Cole, someone who's running against him because it was approved, it is multi-use, it's home, it's townhomes, and it's also apartments. And there's retail going to be in there too.
There's no doubt the growth on that end of the community is, I mean, it's coming. We know they've approved so much, but we as a board, this board really needs to be paying attention to land in that area. I think it's well past time that, and I know we're working on it, but I think that there's definitely schools that need to be built up in the north end to support the massive growth. So and the land that we're looking at or that's available, and I've sat with Mayor Cole and discussed the land available, or, you know, we've kind of troubleshot that. There just isn't much. So he recommended one, and by the time I got home from that meeting, he called and said, they've sold it to a developer. So it moves fast, but there is definitely a need.
Okay.
Is there anything else on the building plan, Mr. Lee, that we need to know?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the building plan, members of the board? Okay, next item.
All right, next we have Financial Matters, tab 9, so our GPS fund budget amendment. And I know it's bad to do a budget amendment this early, but this goes back into, we received a grant in May, or actually it was in June. It was the meeting I led but didn't lead, that fund meeting, where we had some representatives offer a larger grant to us. And so this is that budget amendment for larger grant that offers us to be able to have trainers at middle and high school. And so this amendment reflects that. This budget amendment funds 8 additional athletic trainers for RCS high and middle schools. Funding for these additional positions is derived from a recently approved 3-year agreement with Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance and additional state BEP funds allocated above the May 2022 BEP estimate that was used for the original revenue budget line for BEP for fiscal year 22-23.
Thank you. Questions or comments, members of the board? Next item.
Next, we have board recognition of the Rockville 12th Man Club at Rockville High School as an RCS School Support Organization, or SSO. Per RCS Board Policy 2.404, only a group or organization that has entered into a written cooperative agreement with the board may use the name, mascot, or logo of a school or the school district to solicit or raise money, materials, property, security, services, or other things of value. The Rockville 12th Man Club has provided all information requested from the board recently updated written cooperative agreement and can be recognized as an RCS SSO. It is noted that this SSO is in the process of applying for an IRS determination letter to be recognized as a 501c3 nonprofit entity, and in compliance with the Board of Education written cooperative agreement cannot be open a separate checking account until this process is completed. Until that time, the Booster Club will utilize the Rockville High School student activity funds for all its financial activities and be subject to the BOE financial policies and procedures.
Thank you. I have a question. Our policy, once they establish their 501c3, will those funds be able to be transferred to the Booster Club?
Mr. Runyon, I don't necessarily believe we could transfer funds raised that way, would we?
What would happen is probably a check would be,
Okay.
and then, you know, they would deposit it into their own checking account once, you know, they are determined to be a 501c3.
We'd have to make sure we followed all of our, of course, fundraising procedures for those funds that were transferred over, but, okay.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Any questions or comments, members of the board?
And I would envision we'd have some more of these. Opening a brand-new school, that was something that I wasn't necessarily able to do in opening a school support organization for our athletics, and so I would imagine, appreciate the board looking at this again.
Thank you. I'm glad we are too. Asset to our programs. Any other questions or comments? Okay, next item.
All right, number 3, the 22-23 approved fees. So again, I don't necessarily know this was done in the past, but it's something that's supposed to be done. And so per policy 6.707, prior to the beginning of each school year, the board, upon the recommendation of the principals and directors of schools, shall approve all student fees for the upcoming school year. Additional fees may be approved during the school year as needed. And thank you to Monica, our coordinators as well, for getting all of this organized and presented.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, members of the board? Appreciate the transparency on that.
And number 4, just to review an update of the rezoning consultant with consideration to add building capacity. And so just looking at getting something in there as well. I met with the consultant last week just briefly to ask where some of their areas were. They were struggling with some of the things, same things we do, in having an understanding of 2 school systems in the same district and having grade levels that overlap with each other in those school districts. And so they've, in talking with them, also would like to see facilities as well to see what overall capacity that we may not see.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reed, is it possible to get updated information from the consultants to determine what that cost would be to the board so that we can vote on it on Wednesday? Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, next item.
Next, we had our insurance update. Anything else? Okay. You guys want to? Yeah, we can. You guys, do you want to give any information tonight, or do you want to do it Wednesday? It's up to you. Okay, perfect. We'll do that during the insurance update on Wednesday.
Wonderful. See you Wednesday.
Especially since we're moving that board agenda out of the consent agenda to the normal line item in financial, that would make sense.
Yes. Okay.
Great.
Director's update.
So several things. You guys know that I try to not talk too much, but I want you to have the information. So a couple updates. One, salary study. We reached out to several local, not necessarily local, but several third-party vendors, meeting with our purchasing department currently. And so we have really 2 options. We can utilize a current vendor that one of these other municipalities already used, whether that is Clarksville, Montgomery, Murfreesboro City. There have been some other ones as well that have used one. We want to make sure that their scope is looking at everything we want to look at. And so that's what our hesitation is right now with using that. The other part of that, though, is if we go out on our own request for proposal, the timeline, and I know this seems crazy because we're only in July, but for them to do that timeline for a true salary comparison, for us to do a request for proposal, all those different types of things, I'm not sure that it would be done in time for us for our budgeting cycle to begin in November and December. And I know that's crazy to think about, but I'm not confident it'll be done in time. So Joanne and Lynn and I, and Brian, we're looking at probably piggybacking off one of those vendors that has already been used by a county. We're just making sure that in the contract terms, it's looking at everything we wanted to look at. So.
The 2 cities were Clarksville and...
Clarksville and Murfreesboro City use the same vendor. They both had different, and I'll bring you those names on Wednesday. I think we had 7 that reached out. Some, they weren't necessarily thrilled with the results, but that was the one. Murfreesboro City didn't love theirs, but Clarksville did. But it all depends on what you're asking for in your scope of work.
Okay.
Next, teacher vacancies, I already hit on. We'll discuss that on Wednesday with a breakdown by school. This is probably the busiest but also most exciting time of the year for educators because it's when school year is starting. Your educator friends and anyone that you know, I always talk about that they should be a little bit anxious. If they're not anxious and nervous at this time of the year, then they probably don't need to be doing this anymore. We definitely need them, so we don't need them going anywhere if they're not anxious or nervous. But there's always that anxiety and nervousness that goes with having a new set of students in front of you or leading a faculty or whatever. So it's an exciting time for that. Our principal started back July 6th. Our AP started back last Monday. Our instructional coaches started today. Our teachers start next Monday, and then kids come for their 2-hour day on August 5th. A shout out, a couple years ago, we used to have a Title II funds. We had a summer conference that we did, and this board was great in removing those Title II funds. We started doing curriculum leads, which you guys have recently approved, and giving those funds to our own employees. And so we used to contract out that service for about $250,000, $260,000. The last year we did that, we had 700 roughly people attend. Over the last 2 weeks, we've held our own summits, elementary, middle, and high school summits with all departments across our entire organization. We had over 1,000 attendees from all Rutherford County, and overall the cost was less than $2,000, and that was just materials. And so a huge shout out to Marcy, Kathy, Amy, our presenters, our coordinators. It's a huge thing, some lessons learned in trying to run a huge conference, or 3 of them really, but that was great. Last is just busy and exciting time. Of course, we'll be starting releases to parents. James and I have met and really talking about some new releases we have going to parents. Today, really about transportation registration, 2-hour day, but we'll do more about a code of conduct, instruction services. COVID right now, and I know that's the thing that just keeps on. So with COVID, we've talked with our staff here. When we look, the state is not doing contact tracing any longer. They are not necessarily doing anything at daycares for contact tracing. It doesn't mean that we are saying it's not as important or not something, but our job is to focus on what's controllable in our area, and our controllable area is education. Even if someone were to test positive when you contact the health department, they don't necessarily even want to know any longer. And so we are treating it as any other illness when it comes to absences, coding attendance, all those different types of things. In starting the school year. Last, just on a personal note, thank you guys. I wasn't able to be with you at the summer law retreat or summer law conference this last week, but it was an exciting time for us. My son Declan, you guys, our community supported him for the last 2.5 years, from August 9th, 2020 until technically his last day of chemo is August 6th. He's still taking pills right now. He takes daily chemo every single day, but he had his port removed and his IV, all of those last IV treatments, so it's been a long journey and celebration. So thank you guys for your support during that. We've endured a lot together in that role as curriculum instruction and this role as well, so truly appreciate it personally.
Thank you. We're glad to hear he's doing better. Ms. Maxwell?
I will have something for the legislative, Tennessee legislative, and federal.
Thank you. General discussion.
I was wanting to know, it's been I guess we took a break for the summer, but our parent meetings were very successful. I would like to see if put some more and get them scheduled over the next couple of months, because I really want to continue those.
We can do that. I can get with James. James, do you also want to talk about what our structure is going to be for communication? Just off the cusp, I know that we're doing different sessions, different things except
Would you like me to talk about it?
I would love for you to talk about it, Mr. Evans.
Happy to. So we are, the communications department, we're an office of about 2.5, but we are planning some half meeting that I share an assistant with the wonderful Miss Ridley over here. We are working on some structures today on how we're going to communicate this year. So for example, we're going to continue doing the Sunday message videos on Sundays, of course. On, oh gosh, I'm on the spot now. On Mondays, we are doing, what did I say we're doing on Mondays?
One day was department. Just go through what we're doing.
Well, okay, so we're on Tuesdays, for example, we are doing the job feature of the week, like if there's a specific job that is just really needing applicants, just really spotlighting some of the career choices that we have open for people. So on Tuesdays, you'll see things come out on social media and going home into the media and things like that. On Wednesdays, we're going to do a spotlight on a different school. Our goal is to do every school. Now, for all of you math majors out there, before you catch me on this, I realize that there are 45 school weeks, but we have 50 schools. I get that. So we've got some plans to squeeze them in. We're going to actually start next Wednesday, so that's going to gain me one. And then we're going to do one like Thanksgiving week, and so we're going to have those mapped out so that all 50 schools get at least one feature or story about them this year, because we realize that, especially with the elementary schools, sometimes they get lost in the shuffle because the high schools and the middle schools have a lot of the flashier programs that are more visual. On Thursdays, we're going to do what we're calling Rutherford Faces. We're going to do a quick little feature on just some of the unsung heroes who work in our district. So it may be a custodian or a school secretary or someone in the cafeteria or a bus driver. We're already starting to get some of those worked in and do as many of those as we can. That's on Thursdays. And then on Fridays, we're going to spotlight athletics and fine arts somehow. We're working with Ms. Halford and our coach Harris on how to do that exactly on Fridays. But there may be a a big game that weekend or something like that, we want to be able to spotlight, let people know that, hey, it's the Battle of the Borough or something like that. And I really wish I could remember what is on Monday, but
I feel like Monday was an instruction standpoint, working with the coordinators.
I know what Monday is now. Monday is a parent tip day. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. On Mondays, we're working with our coordinators in the instruction department and some of our principals, and we're going to have a parent tip that'll go out every Monday that will just talk about simple things you can be doing at home to help reinforce what your child's learning and doing in the classroom. I told my board in my room, and I missed it. So that's our plan. It's going to take a lot to do that, but that's what we're working toward.
And I'll use the new director of schools. I should have given you an update, or I should have given you a heads up I was going to do that.
Okay,
My fault.
I'm used to it, Dr. Sullivan. Keep me on my toes. I appreciate it.
Thank you, we appreciate the
Are y'all
information.
planning to do something, to do a shout out to the 50th anniversary for Riverdale and Oakland? I know August the 12th, Riverdale's got theirs planned all together.
We did not.
No, we're not doing that. We don't care for Riverdale or Oakland. We're not doing that this year. No, but it's.
Without hearing about Riverdale, but we did.
Yes, we are going to do something
Y'all
with those
be nice.
things, so absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, great way to end the meeting. Thank you for the information, Mr. Evans.
Yes, ma'am.
And exciting stuff coming forward. I like the way we're coordinating communication. That's awesome. Any other general discussion items before?
Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier for our moment of silence, but Dr. and Michelle Perkins, their son was killed in a tragic accident. It was just released this afternoon, so if our county would keep them in our prayers.
Yeah, it's very tragic, the Perkins family. Appreciate you mentioning it. We'll bring it up at the board.
I meant to mention, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It's an awful situation. Any other items for general discussion this evening?
Ms. Johnson, you may want to just let our parents know that tax-free weekend is this weekend. We are pushing out that information too, but it's always a popular time for parents to buy clothing and school supplies, and so we just like to make sure they all know about it.
Thank you. You just let them know. I appreciate that. It slipped my mind.
You could get tax-free and Prime, Amazon Prime on the same.
Good shopping. Okay, any other items for general discussion? If there are not any, appreciate everybody being here this evening. We'll see you on Wednesday. We are adjourned.